is a grant? Okay. And I want you guys to really open your mind when we go through this, and don't think about things you've already thought you knew about. I really want you to come at this with a free, open mind. Okay. So what is a grant? A grant is a way that the government or private organizations can fund your ideas and projects and to provide public services or to stimulate the economy. Okay. Okay. So, well, I'm not going to stick on this. We're going to go deeper in depth into that in a minute. Grants are monetary gifts that do not have to be repaid. Okay. So not like a loan. So a loan, let's say Bank of America gives you a business loan. You're paying that back with interest, right? So they're just saying you can hold on to this for a while and grow your business, but make sure you give it back to me with extra on top. Okay. Grants, you do not have to be paid back, except some grants do have stipulations that you have to meet, or you have to pay it back. And that is not many. Like some federal grants and some, like, so basically let's say Kathleen applies for a grant to buy a building, right? And they give her $200,000 to buy a building, and she spends it on clothes or a trip to Mexico or whatever she spends it on, but she does not buy the building. And usually in your terms and conditions for the grant, it'll ask you like a follow-up. It'll say in like 6 months to a year, we need to see the paperwork, the receipts, the deed, whatever that showed us that you took that money and you used it for what you said. So we need to see the deed to the property, or like something happened, the paperwork that's showing that you actually used that money the way you were going to. Now, all grants don't have that follow-up piece, but some of them do. So be mindful of that. If your grant has a follow-up piece, it may say, okay, if you do not have this done by this time, your grant has to be repaid. So it's just a way so people aren't just taking grant money and going to Mexico. I keep saying that because I'm going to Mexico soon. But anyway, and going to Mexico, right? So be mindful of that. When you do apply for a grant, they will have like terms and conditions, applications, agreements, things like, especially the larger grants. When you start getting into grants that's like over probably like $5,000 to $10,000, they start to have more stipulations as far as that follow-up process, especially when you get like over like 30,000. They're really trying to make sure that you're using the money the right way. Okay. But like I said, not all of them, even if it's a large grant, all of them don't always say you have to do it to pay it back. But let's just do what we say we're going to do. If you get a grant to buy a building, buy the building. Okay. Let's just do what we're supposed to do and not make this difficult. Okay. So grants can come in the form of actual money, like dollars, like a check paid to you, products. So let's say you get a grant from Amazon or some other company. They're like, okay, well, we're not going to give you money, but we can give you, office supplies, or we can give you, it's kind of considered like an in-kind donation, but it can be also done through a grant process, or it can be services. And so you guys know that we recently got the Comcast Rise grant. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but Comcast has a grant where they're giving out different services. Okay. And you can pick the services that you want. So we picked, what did we pick? We picked commercial production and airtime. So what we won with that grant was they're going to basically make in their production studio, they're going to make a commercial, a high quality commercial, and they're going to air it through their, through Comcast avenues for 3 months. Okay. And so if you guys aren't familiar with paid advertising, with media advertising, that's a nice chunk of change. Okay. If you've never done like a media commercial, like on a TV or on a streaming platform, that can definitely go into the thousands of dollars, especially if you're running it for 90 days. So instead of Comcast giving us, like, let's say a check for $50,000, because then eventually they have to do the production of the commercial. So instead of them giving a check for $50,000, they're saying, hey, we have some great people here, some great services, some great people that can help you with your business. Instead of me just giving you this money, we're going to use our manpower and our labor and make a commercial for you. And then we're going to air it completely free for you. So you see how that is not cash, but it's services. Okay. So you got a service from a company, and that's common too. Thank you guys. Okay. And so those are different ways you can get grant money, but a grant is basically something that you get, you don't have to pay back, whether it's money, service, or a product. Okay. All right, so who can apply for grants? Oh, no, wait, go back. Did you read that? You probably did. I had a poll for that, but it's okay. It's okay. Let's keep going. I'll be on my poll game next time. Okay, so who can apply for grants? Absolutely anyone, for the most part. And this was something that I did not know until probably like 4 years ago when I really started to dive into the grant world. So just so you know, there is a grant for absolutely everything. I mean, there's probably very few things, unless it's like a legal activity. So you might not be able to find a grant for anything that's like gambling or, you know, something like that. But nothing illegal, but you know, like those kind of stuff you might find a grant for. But for the most part, almost anything you can think of, there's a grant for. And I used to think that my first thing I thought was that grants were only for nonprofits. No. Okay, that's not the case. Then I thought grants were only for businesses. No. Right? Okay, so let's break it down. So anything you possibly think of, there's probably a grant for it. For example, there are grants for persons with disabilities. And not just disabilities, people that have certain attributes. Like there are grants for ambidextrous people. So people who write with both hands, right and left, there are grants for them. There are grants for people who are blind or deaf, or there are grants for people who have certain ailments or diseases. There are grants for people who, anything. There are grants for people who, like anything you possibly think of as an individual, there's a grant for that, okay? There are also grants for the personal level. And this is something that I did not know. So there are grants you can apply for. We all know like first-time home buyer grants, right? Did you know there's so many more grants besides the most popular first-time home buyer grants when it comes to buying a house? There are so many grants you can apply for when you're buying a house. When you're buying your first house, everyone always talks about the first-time home buyer, but there are so many other grants that you can apply for. And I went through that when I was getting my house. Now, there's a lot. There's a lot out there that you can apply for that will bring down your, you apply it towards your down payment or your mortgage in general. You can have grants that, there are even like, listen, there are grants you can get to upgrade your house. Like, let's say you bought a house and you want to get those solar panels on there. There are grants for that. There are grants for, I'm telling you, when I tell you the grant for everything, it's a grant for everything. Okay. There are also grants for individuals to, like, I don't say I'm saying it the right way. Let's say that you're going through a financial struggle, right? And usually they have like different stipulations, like you have to live like in certain areas. There are grants for moms. If you have children, there are grants for you. There are special grants for moms with children to go back to school. There are grants to buy cars. For usually the ones I've seen are like people with children, like single moms with children. Single moms with children have a lot of grants out there. But there are grants for individuals. Don't think you have to just be a business to get a grant. Okay. There are these other, I think this other one that I found. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. There are also grants for businesses, and you don't have to be a nonprofit to get a grant. You can be a startup. You can be at the idea stage and not even have an LLC set up to get a grant. You can get, let's say you have a grant set up and like for Notary2Notary, we got a grant this year to fund our payroll. So we have a company and we have employees of the company, and we have to pay the people in our company. There was a grant that was put out that someone had randomly sent me that our state put out, and it was called the Get Back to Work grant. And they're all over the place, guys. And so what it was the governor had, because ever since COVID happened, they a lot of people were not working, they were getting unemployment, and they were seeing let me try to say this right. A lot of people didn't want to go back to work because their unemployment was paying more than their actual job was. And so once they stopped unemployment, they saw people were still not going back to work. And so all the states governments were trying to enact different ways to get people to go back to work. And so one thing they did in Virginia was that they gave out grant money for every new hire you were able to hire. And so they would pay a portion of their payroll. So say, hey, if you hire these people to come back, we're going to give you money to pay them to work in your company to make you money. Okay. And so that was one grant that we applied for and we did get, but they're all over the place. Okay. And I'm going to talk about why those grants actually exist too in a minute. Okay. And then of course there are grants for individuals to care for their pets. There's grants for everything. Danielle said, wait, hold on. She must have a pet. Okay. Anything you could possibly think of, there's a grant for. Okay. All right. I've seen a lot of grants for like home repair for the elderly, or like if they need like ramps installed and things like that. There are grants out there for that. Okay. Yeah. What about partial deaf? Does it have single sided? You have to look into it. I know that I don't know how those how the stipulations go, but I just know there are grants for people who are deaf. I'm not sure if they have what kind of stipulations that go along with that. Do grants require an LLC for your business? No, and they don't. It depends on what you're applying for. We're going over that in a little bit. Okay. Does a grant apply to your credit report or score? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Nope. How can brand new LLCs get a guaranteed grant without being competition? Pretty much impossible. So I was trying to think of like a cool way to say it. There's no way to guarantee a grant. This is not happening. You can't. I'm trying to think if there's any grant that you're guaranteed to get. No, it's all application. It's all application. But I will tell you this, Lisa. What I will tell you is that most people don't apply for grants, like scholarships. They don't apply. Like so much money. I think it was. I keep quoting it, but I don't know exactly what the figure was. There was like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that went unclaimed yesterday in my state, and last year in my state alone for grants that did not get claimed.